Yeah, here we are. And let's see, let me check in today. It is Wednesday, December 7th. I do believe that's Pearl Harbor Day, right? That's a long time ago when Japanese were not our friends and our friends. I'm speaking as an American right now. But when I'm talking about most things, I'm just speaking as a soul on our planet doing this stuff. So anyway, happy Pearl Harbor Day, I guess. Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly the appropriate greeting, but anyway, today remember that we're a lot happier when we don't bomb each other and we work together. And we really have a lot of extraordinary people in Japan using iAwake right now. It's really catching on in Japan like a very positive virus, which is really cool. And also in China, and there's these. Both countries have a tradition in their mythic, like DNA, where meditation is a part of it. By the way, bon appetit, Jade. Hopes good. And so that's really cool. So it's not a hard sell. When you go and you think of their samurai and heroic monk warriors and whatnot, and the masters both in China and Japan, and now they're really using this new technologies, new meditation stuff. Really a lot of it's really catching on. So that's pretty exciting. So the purpose of today's call was I was going to talk with Leigh Spusta about a new product that we are getting ready to launch. Is really different from anything we've ever done. And as you guys know, if you guys have listened to Solar Infusion, Deep Delta, Deep Recovery, those are all, among others, products tracks that Leigh has created, and I think they're just fantastic. So anyway, let's talk about something really kind of interesting. We hired a researcher, a guy very bright, Dr. Juan, and his last name fails me right now, but it's a boss name, so it's Yudi or something like that. It's an interesting name. But he has done research in brain entrainment technology for many years, binaural beats, and done research for some of the big names in the industry, or in the field, I should say. Industry sounds a bit industrial. And he tested PMP-22 on 4 different subjects, randomly selected off the street kind of thing, who had never meditated before, I think. And anyway, did all this sophisticated analysis, and I'll give you the extremely simplified version. Was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it really shows significant shifts in the brain in just a 20-minute period, and doing exactly what it said it was doing, and taking people down into a deep delta state. And he said he'd never seen any binaural products before act so powerfully, which is like, yeah, we've been saying this for a long time, or you guys have been saying that for a long time, that this stuff is just another generation as far as efficacy and depth of practice. And now we're more and more getting the objective scientific confirmation, which is stuff that we've known for a long time. It's like, this stuff really rocks. And if you guys have seen the video of me working with Judith Pennington doing the mind mirror while I meditated to Deep Delta, which is Leigh Spusta's one of his brilliant tracks, you can see she just said, bam, there it goes. Here's the awakened mind pattern. Here's the evolved mind pattern. It's very strong. It's very clear. It's not fuzzy at all. And now we have other researchers that are beginning to show us the same thing. So as we grow and develop and get a little more capital to grow this company, we're going to really emphasize more and more of the research and development. And of course, in integral terms, you have every interior has an exterior, and vice versa. So when we're looking at the human brain under the influence of these devices, that's an exterior. That's looking at a physical organ of the human brain, and seeing what these subtle energies and what the entrainment and all the stuff that we put into profound meditation tracks does to the human brain. Then, of course, on the other side, it's the interior experience. People were saying, this is what it, my first session, this is what happened. I've been using it for X amount of time. My depression is evaporating. I'm feeling better. I'm more creative. I'm happier. I feel closer to God, or whatever the effects are. And that's both of those types of feedback and mirroring for us are equally valuable. But now we're starting to have an equal focus on or more of a focus. We've always had that on the human brain, and there's so many amazing biometric, neurobiometric devices that are coming online now. Really live in a renaissance of this whole consciousness hacking, consciousness transformation movement. It's very exciting to be a part of it. And,
hey, John.
Yes, ma'am.
Leigh is here.
Leigh is in the house. All right.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, how do we see him? Hey, there he is. There's our rock star. That's the thing about rock stars. You should kind of put up with them, like they want only green M&Ms. They show up late for their concerts and everything, but we don't care because they create great music and they look cool and we just love them. So anyway, with that introduction, hi, Leigh, how are you?
All right, I'm doing okay, John. How you doing?
Good. We're doing really well. And a lot of exciting things are happening, and I'll clue you in later as far as iAwake and growing this company and getting the vision of all over the world is starting to really come in the last few weeks. Things have really started opening up. But what I wanted to talk to you today, now this is a very interesting and new product for us, and these particular tracks are called the Teachings of Wan-Tsu, and maybe you can tell us about what they are and how you done it. What was the creative impulse that got you to do this stuff?
Yeah, it's a different type of approach. Essentially, for quite a while, I've had an idea that a guided meditation could take on a little more life, could bring the listener in a little more. I don't want to say deeply necessarily, but maybe connect to it more fully, be more fully engaged in it. And so over time, I realized, well, what if we merge some sort of storytelling element in with guided meditation, or that vehicle of teaching somebody how to access their own inner resources. And I've had different ideas, and then the idea of Wan-Tsu just occurred in my mind one day. This Chinese sage. What if you could press play and sit back and interact with a Chinese sage? That would be pretty cool. And then it was a matter of, well, how do we structure that into a story that makes sense? Because here's a guy that would be gone for the last 1,500 years or whatever the time frame is. And so that's kind of what led me to come up with how I structured the storyline. So it was kind of organic in that way. I just kind of had to sit with it. But the more I did that, the more this character of Wan-Tsu kind of took on a life of his own. It started to visualize him and what kind of personality the guy would have, and kind of the qualities he would have as a teacher. And then his background. What's his background story? Which people that listen to it would find out. Which that was, I had to make some choices with that, and as listeners would that have heard it would maybe understand my comment that it wasn't. Let me rephrase that. I could have made him the perfect Zen guy that had the perfect Buddha life, but I don't think that would have made sense. It's so bringing him into the human realm, I think, was important.
And so and I'm a very visual guy, so I really visualize things a lot. And so you put on the headphones, and of course those of you who are not new to iAwake know Leigh's work. He has some of our just amazing tracks that I use all the time: Deep Delta, Solar Infusion, Deep Recovery, which I want to do version 2 anyway. Not my your part, actually, I want to use the same sound, but I want to re-record it and just make it a little bit different. But anyway, so stuff that I use on a regular basis. And by the way, I was using solar infusion. I was exhausted the other day, and we've been traveling a lot. And I just laid down on the bed, gave myself permission to allow my back and meditate. And I went into this kind of shifted between awake and dream stuff. And after 4 minutes, I woke up and I felt much more refreshed than if I just taken a nap. I mean, I was renewed and ready to go. It was really remarkable. So
Nice.
solar infusion, you guys, it's one of the coolest things we got. It's really a great one. So anyway, yeah, so you listen to this, and the music, of course, is done by Leigh, who's a great composer, and additionally a great entrainer composer along with that. And then he starts a story, and so you're hearing it, and you're the I guess you're kind of the hero of the story, and Wan-Tsu is the mentor or the teacher, and just takes you into this other time and different place and on this kind of adventure. And anyway, I think it's really cool. And I want to, of course, we've talked about this before, but I want this to be the prototype for starting to use this stuff with VR and entrainment and the whole, actually moving people through the world. But right now we're just starting with this prototype, which it's standalone is really cool. So go on and tell us a little more about, I don't know, the kind of music and kind of entrainment and how you blended that in with the narrative of the story and the characters.
Sure. Well, I wanted something that had a kind of Eastern flavor, something that matched the time frame and cultural background of Wan-Tsu. So, on the one hand, I had some entrainment tracks that I was sifting through, and I found one, and I ended up adding some elements to it to make it kind of have the feel of like flutes and just this flowing kind of in my mind anyway. It's kind of a nature inspired piece, even though you don't hear any nature sounds in it. It just feels like like a flowing with nature type of sound. So I started with that, and then I realized, well, I have a gushen, which is a Chinese harp, or zither rather, a Chinese zither. So it would be kind of a mistake not to use that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I sat and just started to record some of that music until I came up with stuff that I felt resonated with, the Wan-Tsu piece. And once I worked that in, I felt like, hey, now that kind of really locks in the flavor of Wan-Tsu. But in general, the entrainment level is, I wanted to have the person have plenty of alpha awareness, or brainwave activity, as well as theta. So between the two, between the calm focus and receptivity, also the imagination quality of visualization and just kind of getting lost into the story. So
yeah, and I might add, Leigh, you have a long experience working in the field of hypnotherapy. Is that not true? Or working and so I think your voice is really great. It's very inductive, and you do certain things that must be hypnotic tricks, when the bird's walking around in the circle and you're visualizing these things, and I'm just like, I'm being hypnotized in this really groovy world, it's like I'm really going down to this thing. So I thought that was pretty remarkable also.
There are some hypnotic techniques definitely used within the storytelling itself. More of an Ericksonian hypnosis method. There's nothing direct that you could point at. It's just more about how I guess the intonation of the voice is one thing, but just the sequence of events and how the listener allows that to form pictures in their mind. But pretty soon into it, once the dialoguing is really going on, I didn't have to rely on hypnotic technique that heavily, because I think between the entrainment and the story itself, once we know somebody's kind of into it and rolled into it about 5 minutes into it, you can kind of set that stuff aside and just let the story develop. But I suppose I had parameters I was working within with the storytelling, of course, so as to make sure that we keep somebody engaged at that level.
Yeah, and no, it's also kind of an adventure tale, so there is some violence for you, PG folks out there. You know, it's definitely not as violent as the New Testament or, you know, other.
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty mild on that, but there are some stuff that goes on. Is some stuff that goes on, and then, you know, you're also, you find certain treasures or certain objects or certain of these totems or something that you're guided to find. Of course, you supply them. They're not provided for you. It doesn't say, you know, you have the Grail cup here or something like that. You supply the listener supplies their own, and so that kind of takes you into kind of a Jungian place where you're working with your own symbology, which is really powerful. And then, you know, then you go off in the woods or next to the stream or something with Wan-Tsu, and you sit and you do a meditation with him where you kind of get to absorb the lessons you've been taught and take this symbol in as in a dream symbol. And I've done work with dreams myself, both personally and with clients, and I know those symbols of the unconscious, when they come and we actually hold them in awareness and consciousness, it's kind of bridging, you know, the unconscious and the conscious mind, the left and right part of the brain again. And some really interesting, transformative, energetic, mysterious, good stuff happens when you're doing that kind of work. And so I really appreciated that. And of course, yeah. And I know I'd love to see this be like a series, you know, where the continuing teaching of Wan-Tsu and kind
of the idea of the structure, you know, why it's called lesson one. You know, the overall idea is that it can be a serial or an ongoing, where one, you know, now you know Wan-Tsu, so we can bring him in again, and there's that familiarity, and we could kind of just start building out the story. Not that you can't go back and reference older elements or episodes that you've already listened to and re-experience them. For instance, the adaptation where you're going into the temple, you can re-experience that later, and the symbols might change.
That's right.
Own, yeah, coming from your own subconscious mind or higher self or wherever it is you believe they come from. And so that's kind of a neat thing. But nonetheless, it's meant to be kind of progressive, so that as over time you know, you look back, you're like, gee whiz, I've learned this from Wan-Tsu, this and this and this. You know, that hopefully it is a thing where it's an unfolding of awareness and a relationship, much like a mentor-student type of relationship, even though it's, you know, it's an audio recording.
And speaking of synchronicities, you know, when the exterior world starts to match in mysterious, unaccounted for ways your exterior world. Well, like 2 weeks after I'd gotten your tracks and I started listening to him and wrapping my head around this, you know, he just pulled, you know, he pulled this out of the ether of the collective unconscious. Wan-Tsu shows up. Well, we're at the Trans Tech Convention in Palo Alto, and lo and behold, I'm sitting across from this really wise Chinese guy who's got these penetrating eyes, and there on the spot, we worked out a licensing deal to take iAwake all over China. And these are really well-financed, very respectable businessmen with the best of intentions. I mean, this guy leads with helping his people, you know. He didn't say, we're going to make millions out of this or anything like that. He says, you know, we're really suffering in China. We need this medicine, you know. And it was like, bam, there was our, you know, just the Chinese connection again. And I said, you know, it's kind of weird. But anyway, so we've been working with him and his team, and it's going to be released. They're starting, well, they have our whole catalog. We did a licensing deal, and it's going to be going out to the Chinese, and they loved our website, so they're using the same basic thing and stuff. So, you know, I mean, that's very, very exciting stuff. And it just happened to be, you know, how did that happen? You know? So,
right.
Yeah. And I want, like I said, I want to take this idea and I want this to be also a visual thing, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And you know, and sometimes, you know, you'll want to use VR as an aid to meditation, and other times you don't. You know, sometimes you just want to shut your eyes and go inside, or, you know, you're someplace that you don't want to carry around a big VR thing. But I think it could be a really extraordinary, really fun, transformative product. You know, transformation doesn't always have to be a bloody, you know, painful, you know, thing. It could be something really adventure. Exactly, it is an adventure. But yeah, and we were at, again, at the Trans Tech Convention. A lot of people were showing their virtual reality devices they had, and they had one where this young man, Eric was his name, and his partner, and I'd met them at some conference years ago. They remembered me anyway, but it was showing in this particular thing they had on, you could see the breath going out into infinity and coming back from infinity. So can you imagine sitting in the woods, Wan-Tsu's there, there's a stream, a deer, and your breath is going, it would be really wonderful. So I'm very excited about bringing our technologies together. And since we started doing the Spiritual Tech Talks, which I interviewed you for, among many other luminaries, it's a yes and, yes and, yes and. How can we collaborate? How can we, put our technologies together and create better stuff for our awakening? Wake up, show up, wake up, clean up, grow up. Or you can simplify it to grow up and wake up. Two essential parts. Is one part is doing the ego work, the ego structure, and and I have seen in my studies that any spiritual path or work that tries to say the ego doesn't exist or ignore it. Oh, many dragons come out of that particular cave. Yeah. When you ignore the ego, it just takes over. It says, ignore this, as you get eaten by the ego dragon, So you have to learn to tame the dragon too, which might be a really cool theme for one of our next chapter.
That's right, yeah.
Deal with that beast. And so you have to feed the dragon with non-dual compassion and love, and then it turns into a dragon of light. Wow, it's a good story. We're making this
John,
up. Yeah.
John, you want to turn off your mute there so I can just say something without all the echo?
Okay. Oh, here we go.
Cool. Leigh, is it echoing now or is it okay?
I hear you fine.
Excellent. Okay. Leigh, you told me about this maybe months or a year ago. I'm not sure when it was. It was a long time ago. This dream that you had of creating this. And
the concept of this, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just excited to see it coming into form, because this is something you've been thinking about and gestating for a long time. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, the first kernel of this was probably 15 or 20 years ago, of this idea of a virtual shaman type of character, and how can we bring that to life for people to, take it one step further than just something guided meditation where you're just passively experiencing it. How can we bring it to that next level where you feel like you're really involved or really connected with that experience of being taught by a Zen master or a shaman or a spiritual leader or whatever. And so I've had different thoughts over the years and different incarnations of what that character would be, who is that prototype. And more recently I realized, well, it's not just one. It can be whatever we come up with, that fits different lessons that are there to be taught or experiences to be had. And then Wan-Tsu, he maybe 6 months ago at the most, him as a particular character, it came into existence. So it was more accessible than some of the previous things that I had been working on in my head. It just seemed like, it's a straighter shot for me for whatever reason, to the thought into the reality of the manifestation of, here's the recording, here, check it out. And then however that might turn into the ongoing, episodic type of approach.
Mm-hmm.
It was more accessible for me, and so it came out.
Okay, I'll mute myself again, let John back in here.
All right.
I'm kidding. Anyway, so and I just see such potential for this technology, and I really hope that we can just manifest it. Because first of all, it feels like just one of these creative things. When a great song starts coming through, or a novel, or this or that, and it just has this kind of magical quality to the idea. But we could do stuff for treatment centers, for pain, for recovery from addiction, for recovery of creativity. I mean, all kinds of different processes through this kind of entrainment, participatory, spiritual storytelling journey in which you are the hero. God, it's a great idea. I love it. Mm-hmm. So does anybody else have any questions or comments about Leigh and the work and what's going on with this? Or we don't get Leigh here every day, so grab him while you got him.
Just a reminder, looks like Jade.
Sorry,
hey, Jade.
I have myself on double mute. Can you hear me just fine, John?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Fantastic. I'm on my new laptop. Leaving out.
Congratulations.
Next Wednesday, and then to Brazil. Hopefully not too long after that.
That's right.
The visa process has been fun. I got some feedback for sure. One of the first things I wanted to bring about with Leigh was the. I'm not getting any. Speaking of feedback, I'm not getting any feedback into my noise canceling headphones right now when I'm talking, so I'm having a hard time modulating. So if I get too loud, let me know. But he gave me the Lucidity Activation, 40 hertz, at one of our weekly calls, probably 2-3 weeks ago, I would say. And I've been experimenting with it a little bit. I noticed a few things here. One of the things is when I got into a deep state, there was the voice that would come in and say, is this a dream? Am I awake? Or something along those lines. And one of the suggestions that I would have with that, and obviously you're the artist, take with it what you will, but I've been working with it with the Salt Lake Hypnosis Society here in Salt Lake. So I've been going through hypnotic sessions and learning some of the terminology, things like fractionation and everything. And one thing that I've heard a lot through biology is that higher pitched sounds tend to wake us up biologically, because it's like the voice of a crying baby. Kind of your body's hardwired to wake up at a higher level when you hear pitch. So I'm not sure if you're introducing those things deliberately to try to arouse something in the lucid state, but for me it actually seems like it delays the onset of the lucidity. It seems, at least in my case, it would be more helpful to have like a lower and slower voice talking, rather like a, am I awake? Is this a dream? Something a little bit, because of the time dilation effect. When you're actually in a dream, if somebody's talking at normal speed, I'm not sure how the brain actually goes about processing it. But if you're not quite there yet and you hear somebody talking at normal speed, it seems like it reverses the effect of going down. And then as far as what you were saying a minute ago, John, about supplying your own totems in this experience, I thought it was hilarious that you would bring that up, because I've thought a lot about the reality that we're in. Sorry if you hear any noise on my side. I've thought a lot about hypnotic induction techniques and how when we enter this dream state called life, what kind of things would we have supplied ourselves as kind of hypnotic anchors that could trigger under certain events, kind of like deja vu, and wake us up as a gentle alarm clock to another layer of consciousness or awareness. So what I wrote down here is that life is a dream. There are many levels. This is what we refer to when we speak of dimensions. The illusion is that we're stepping into life. The illusion is that stepping into life took time. It isn't. It is simply a now with enforced continuity or linearity. Dreams are constructed from moment to moment with just differing levels of continuity. I mean, how often have we found ourselves in life and then suddenly everything goes either really, really right, really, really fast, or really wrong really fast. And you're like, wow, how did I end up having this day that I never thought I was going to have, Who would have thought that this sort of thing would happen? I think the word you were looking for earlier was not necessarily the depth of going into entrainment, but in the virtual reality world, they call it immersion. So it's the level of like you're saturated with the believability. Your body is fooled into the experience of believing that it's actually there in that state as opposed to somewhere else, kind of entering the matrix more fully. And I love the concept of crafting stories for hypnotic inductions and entrainment and the virtual shaman. So that's all I've got for now.
Thank you, Jade. Leigh, you have any comments on that?
Sure. Jade, thanks. Appreciate your thoughtfulness on all that. A quick note on the lucidity track. That's going to I don't know what version it'll take its newer form, but that'll definitely kind of get a readdress on how we craft it. So I can appreciate your comments, and yeah, in some way, some of the tonality in terms of the low, slow, and ambient tones are definitely kind of the bed that helps us to get pulled down and into it. And then even in entrainment music outside of the lucid dream concept, when I introduce a higher frequency sound, it's to kind of trigger alpha or beta little spikes just to keep the awareness level from dipping too much. And so there's that element, but yeah, we're going to readdress how we're constructing that kind of track in the first place. And it's such a tricky thing when approaching something like that, because everybody's different and it's such a almost mysterious domain, and so having my most recent thoughts about it are having a hypnosis conditioning track by itself that in and of itself is not intended to bring a person into lucidity directly from it, but rather it's a conditioning of the beliefs and the receptivity and kind of planting the seed of expectation, that kind of a thing. And maybe some associations with a particular sound, even as something as simple as a little bell, that later on, if we're listening to a music only track that might be 3-4 hours long or something, that one of those elements might be that little bell that comes in at just that right volume. And within the dream, we're already conditioned to associate the idea of waking up within the dream to the sound of that particular bell. And so maybe using techniques like that where we've preconditioned ourselves.
Anchoring, right?
Yes, definitely creating anchors, or even post-hypnotic suggestions to experience something. Like in a lot of the literature about picking a visual item is your hands, because looking at your hands, if you find yourself in a dream, oh, look at your hands. That's a popular one because they're always there, but also but before you even get to the point where you'll find your hands, you've kind of given yourself a subconscious suggestion to look for your hands, and when you do that you've associated the meaning to it of waking up in the dream. And so we can approach it that way, or we can even stack different anchors, whether it's a bell or looking at your hands, or these different things into a hypnotic recording that basically we condition our mind to be much more open and or ready to have that experience. And then
with the researcher yesterday, when we were going over the results, he was saying it was really remarkable the very strong beta presence at the same time delta. So it's like you're aware in this deep, and delta is associated with deep dreamless sleep, but there's still the waking mind. Beta was there at the same time, so it wasn't you just nodding out, but you're in this deep open place with awareness, with waking awareness, which is almost, I guess, a definition of lucid dreaming, but a lucid meditation or something. That's interesting stuff.
Kind of like a contradiction there in terms of brainwave states, right? Like where we have some of the deepest and then some of the most heightened states of brainwave activity at the same time. It's quite an intriguing state, not just to experience, but even just to look at. Scientifically.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you could see how it was shifting from this part of the brain to the center of the brain with these color imaging things. He was doing really remarkable stuff. Simultaneously, he was tracking all the different states at the same time, showing what they were doing. A really, really interesting thing. We'll send you the paper.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And then also the introduction of gamma. There's been more and more research into using, gamma frequencies of 40, 50 cycles per second to stimulate the lucidity. And now there's people using gamma even outside of that context, just in terms of just active listening in a meditative context for these heightened awareness states. And so I'll be diving more deeply into the whole gamma arena as we move along here. But
yeah, I was actually listening to one of our gamma tracks earlier this morning as kind of a preparation for my other meditation. So I kind of wanted to wake up and be alert. Then I went going, down into deep delta.
Yeah.
Well, look, anybody have any other comments or questions? This is being recorded. Is that right, Pam? And so we're going to, we'll have this edited in some form. So it'll be with the release of Wan-Tsu. So people can, have that. Anything that,
There's some written stuff down here. I don't know if you want to.
Okay. Why don't you read them to us, Pam?
Sure. You want to cut your mute off and then put mute on if you need to? Let's see. Jade says, I was hoping Leigh could point me towards something which could be utilized to enter very deep fractionation states. I remember everything during hypnotic inductions. What's fractionation? Can you define that before you answer the rest of the question?
I'm familiar with the term. So Jade, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is about stepping up and stepping down to move more deeply, kind of like a deepening approach to getting into hypnotic states more deeply. So it's not exactly an induction. It's not exactly a deepening technique. It's kind of a both. So correct me if I'm wrong. I
like titration, kind of?
It's like a strengthening anchor. So it's like you'll open your eyes and then they'll have you close your eyes. And then you'll open your eyes. It reinforces the hypnotic practitioner's ability to work with your subconscious, because your subconscious starts to undergo time dilation along with the hypnotic conditioning, as you said. So it strengthens the overall hypnotic technique being used.
Yeah, I assumed it was kind of using the eyes opened, eyes awake, because we just don't call it fractionation, but yeah, definitely where especially your stubborn subjects that they consciously want to go in, but they don't necessarily find it easy. There's a lot of resistance in the way. The mind just tries to distract or whatever it's doing. And so when we engage all that extra awareness and attention to a process, like especially when it's guided by somebody like, when I say the number 1, open your eyes. When I say the number 2, close them. And so that you'll find the hypnotist saying, okay, 1, 2, 1, 1, kind of going out of order to catch you off guard with. You really have to focus. And then, this stepping down and getting engulfed experience. And so in that respect, I think, deep delta by itself is really good to get you into a depth, but it doesn't necessarily have that kind of built-in equivalent of that, what you're talking about. Because, sometimes I do try to approach the beginning 5, 10, even 15 minutes of an audio musical composition as an induction of sorts. So sometimes I just let it be a smooth transition, and the listeners just going with it, and the depth they attain is kind of up to them. The framework is there, the support is there, but it requires them to follow along with it. And then I have some other recordings where I'm trying on purpose to introduce things that that grab the attention and grab the awareness and then release it, and then grab the awareness and then release it, much like what we're talking about. I think solar infusion works to some degree like that. And in terms of other audio recordings that iAwake has, Opus Magnum might work that way, which is the recording underneath John's deep recovery meditation. But definitely there's an approach there that if something can be stimulating in the beginning with moments of releasing the attention, then by the time you get to 10 or 15 minutes in, when it just allows it to settle and become more ambient, I think we have an easier time going in at a deeper level, especially if we're on the more resistant spectrum side of the spectrum.
Yeah, and by the way, I was going to say Deep Recovery has both the version with my guided meditation and visualization, and just the pure music. So the what was Opus Magnum is still Opus Magnum. It's just paired with Opus Magnum with the over speaking, the speak over. So any other questions or comments?
There's more stuff here. Actually, I've got. Let's see, this is from Taya Lee. John, do you need to mute your thing there? Or are you good? Oh, you did. All right. Leigh, how often, for example, per week, do you recommend listening to the teachings of Wan-Tsu?
All right. And that was something we thought of while we were creating it. And which is why ultimately it should be an episodic, ongoing adventure, in my opinion, that it is standalone, and yet there are elements that we can carry through different episodes that will strengthen over time. But yeah, when you listen to a story like an audiobook, you only want to listen to it so many times until you become familiar with it, and then it no longer kind of gives you the insight that you got when you first listened to it. And so there is a parallel here with that. But we've arranged the tracks so that basically the story is the part that gets you pulled into who is Wan-Tsu. That it's allowing you to suspend your disbelief, just like when you go into the movie theater, and why we can sit through Star Wars at all and have emotional reactions to it as if it's really happening, even though we know it's all made up. So that's the point of the story, in part, is to engage the listener's attention, awareness, and suspension of disbelief to the degree that Wan-Tsu becomes as real a character or mentor as possible. And so, I leave that to anybody's own discretion, how often they want to listen to that part, which would be, I think the way we have it arranged, it's tracks 1 and 2, that kind of give the background or the setup of Wan-Tsu. Whereas tracks 3 and 4, 3 has more of the guided meditation element, where this is where you're really working with him, and you're at the fire, you're at the stream, or you're in the temple, or you're experiencing the elements that he's asking you to connect to. Those things are dynamic in terms of you're going to get a different insight, different awareness, a different expanded experience from that every time you listen to it. And so, again, there's no preset amount of listenings required. It's just if you want to tap into that experience. Once you've had it one time, that you'll know if you want to have it again. And I don't think you'll dilute that experience in terms of the guided meditation part of it if you listen to it once a week or a few times a week, or it can be once every couple of weeks. I mean, it's really how much did you get out of it, and you'll know if you want to re-experience that and how soon. So there's no set parameter with that. But then that last meditation track is really it's just an open space with the entrainment music, with with some guidance, every few minutes, the Wan-Tsu has just a piece of guidance to get focused to your awareness throughout your meditation. So for about 20 minutes, you're able to have this experience where, you're in that state of reflection, and or you might have an insightful or intuitive type of mindset or awareness going on, and you can use that every day. So it's open-ended. I just know that after a few listens, the tracks 1 and 2 are going to kind of lose a little bit of their zest, because you've already heard the story. It's like an audiobook, but it's constructed so that tracks 3 and 4 should be dynamic enough to be able to have repeat experiences, and yet each time you're going to walk away with something different, or an expanded version of previous insights.
And again, a lot of the purpose of iAwake is just to give people the tools to develop a deep interior practice, a deep interior presence in your own life. And we run around so often, we just maybe the unconscious comes through in our dreams, or some of our acting out, as in Freudian psychology, but to have that, just the vastness of our own interior, that experience is equally as important and dynamic in our lives as the bump into things, exterior world. And both of them take practice and time to develop our relationship with both. But these interior tools are just extraordinary, and I think it's a large antidote for a lot of the things that aren't working in our culture. The massive use of drugs and other addictive things, right, to distract, because we haven't been taught how to go inside and how to find these places of deep resonance and healing that exists, and that all the masters were pointing to Wan-Tsu now, and Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. I said, don't be looking around here. The Zennies said that if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. That didn't mean you take that literally, go kill the Buddha. No, it means if you're looking outside of yourself, ultimately for the Buddha, you're not going to get it. You have to go in and do the interior journey, and that's I think Wan-Tsu is definitely part of that transmission of that wisdom and how to do that, and it's really great. Were there any other questions, Pam, that we're kind of getting down?
Yeah.
Time?
Well, Taya says thanks. I really love it. It's amazing. And then John, I've been responding to some of John's queries here. The last one is, what reference sources did Leigh use to create the teacher? And Leigh, you can go ahead and look at his earlier kind of questions about, the intention behind the production and all that too, if you want to respond.
Well, on the sake of, we have limited time left, I'll just answer that last one at least first. Yeah, Google. I once I had the idea of, okay, here's a Chinese sage. All right, what is that? What time frame are we talking about? What region? What province? I had to start making decisions about that in order to help develop the character more. And then I honed in on the Tang Dynasty, the 8th century. Based on what I was reading through, it seemed like it was a time of the Chinese Empire was expanding, and yet there was relative peace within it that allowed, for their literature and their sciences and arts to start to kind of flourish and expand. And it seemed like a nice ripe time for a teacher to come out. So this was after Confucius. This was after what's his name? The I Ching. Blanking on
Lao Tzu.
Yeah, and so so that was within the local kind of mindset of concept at that time. So I didn't want to have a guy that predated too many of these other known sages, because what if a concept comes out of his mouth that's like, yeah, Confucius said that. It just made sense. I don't know. I mean, some of it probably intuitive or artistic in terms of pointing in on that, but seem to match. But yeah, you know, whatever little tidbits of things that are of any historical reference were just me looking on Google. Nothing insane.
You know, I've often thought that, you know, that you, Leigh, you're our young Merlin or our young Gandalf. You know, iAwake, you have that kind of, I know it's a hairstyle and the beard and everything, but it's not that. Even more than that, it's the energy. You bring this sage like this. Oh, God, here's a really wise man, but has a very gentle heart at the same time, a very incisive depth and intelligence, which is, it's a really nice package. So really delighted to be working with you.
Well, I'll take that compliment humbly.
So Pam, anything else, any other questions, pressing questions or announcements or anything else you want to wrap this up with?
John just has a last one. He says, John, would you elaborate on the Chinese connection that you spoke of earlier?
No, I don't know how to elaborate on that. Besides, we've done a licensing deal with a group in China who has brought other American technologies to the Chinese market. However, these people are very, like I said, I don't know if they want to be outed or if there's anything mysterious about it. But this individual, and I met his team. These extraordinary, brilliant young Chinese people. It's really, really cool meeting them via Skype. And of course, I met Jack in person, and I was just like, I mean, he just had these piercing eyes. He must be a Scorpio, and there was just such seriousness of intent. You know, this guy he was not just oh man, we're gonna, you know what I mean? He was like, I need to help my people, and this is amazing technology. I want to bring this to my people. And I was like, damn. I said the first thing I said, you're a very serious man. You know, and he's very humble too. But there's a presence there that really opened my heart, and I said, yes, this is a yes. And so maybe I'll talk about it more as things expand. I don't know if there's any reason we shouldn't talk about it, but who knows? Maybe, anyway, so I hope that answers something or doesn't irritate you too much. So anything else, Pam, that we need to announce? Okay. Hey, well, Jade, thanks for your brilliant presence on our show again, and good luck in Brazil. And anyway, let us know, you know, when you get back, or you can talk to us in Brazil. You know, internet's everywhere now. And Leigh, thank you so much for this, bringing this into creation. And there was a process, you know, to beta testers myself, and you're always open to feedback and polishing and shifting and everything. It's really a pleasure to work with you. And Pam, thank you for being you. And anyway, so God willing, universe willing, got us on our side and all that good stuff. We'll be back next week, same time. So keep practicing, all right, and keep developing the interior and your exterior. By the way, they become one eventually, and we get into that zone. We're going to do some good things and bring hope and healing and wisdom and joy and compassion and fun and creativity and all the good things that come from the depths of our being. So anyway, much love, and we'll see you next time.